You and I both know there are some things that can't be undone. Do you really want to know this? Well, as poorly as I've chosen my guides, I suppose it would be a comfort to know that I'm free of them. Yes, I'm afraid you're right. Well, isn't that what brought us here? Seeking the man who's haunted you for lifetimes? Who I've unwittingly followed for years? That can't be. We've been following them for thousands of years. If that's true, how can you say that? You'd enslave people to a lie. I'd dreaded the idea from the moment the Delimgon suggested it. And yet, it almost feels like a relief. Then we'll rid ourselves of this nonsense once and for all. Good. Then it's because I've managed to find my own direction. But how many can find purpose and satisfaction in the reality you offer? Would it comfort the grieving families to know that their children were hollow-born over a war of ideas? Would it quell the riots in Defiance Bay? However the gods were created, they exist now. That's what matters. He spent his lives, more than any of us will ever know. For what? Binding the world to a lie. Could a man like that ever be redeemed? You were kinder to that man than I would have been. All those lives. And at the end of them, he was no better than the very people he sought to guide. A pity he would ever have to face that realization again. I suppose we'll see if he can rise above that. My name belongs to the gods, in my hand to their service. And I'm going to purge it of your stain. No. I've risen above them. I'll take the leaden key and lead in a way that you, who remained nothing more than a slave to the gods, never could. My name belonged to the gods, in my hand to their service. No more. And I should have done it years before. I'd rather live in uncertainty than servitude. I beg your pardon? What happened? I meant just now.
Fie, you're itching for the kindling touch of your sister, you cocksfeather!
This is a misunderstanding. I didn't say whatever it is you think I said.
We've nigh quarrel.
Well, that is one way of putting it. Then I can't imagine you lack for entertainment in these parts. Courtesy is a rare pleasure in these parts. Though your accent suggests that you are no more local than I. Courtesy is a rare pleasure in these parts, as is the company of a fellow countryman. I'm a wizard by training, and an adventurer by necessity. I was born in the Seathwood, part of the mainland of the Adir Empire, and both of my parents served the nobility, which afforded me an education for which I am grateful. However, there were no open positions in those houses, and so I decided to seek new means in a new land. An excellent question. I came looking for fresh air and cheap land. Instead, the magistrate gave me directions to the inn and a story about the local lord's expectant wife. But I take it that's a familiar tale. Begging your pardon, but neither do you. Yet, circumstances can find a person in the strangest of places. I'm afraid that was a matter of misunderstandings and mistranslations. It doesn't help that people in these parts remember their war with Adir like it was yesterday. Indeed. In that case, welcome to Gilded Vale, a true refuge from civilization. Indeed. The local lord has searched far and wide for similar specialists, and he has rid himself of them almost as desperately. Keep your voice down. Whenever suspicion seizes the locals, they tend to seize whoever's nearest. Of course, I didn't mean to pry. If there was ever a place for caution, this is it. As should I, given recent events. It's just as well. I've had enough of the watered wine and lumpy beds at the inn. They say even the owner tired of the place. Just up and left one day. It explains quite a lot about the upkeep. Perhaps I could join you. I could use a change of scenery, and I find it's better to travel in numbers. Excellent. I shall follow you. Oh, I quite understand. A few more nights of stringy stew won't kill me, I suppose. Though if that dog goes missing, I may have to fast. And how exactly did you come to be here? In Gwithan Ruins? Well, those can be dangerous places during the best of times, which these are not. I mean, half the locals would arrest you for trespassing, and the rest would kill you outright. I'm curious. What exactly did you find there? A man must have his secrets. Very well. And you survived? I've heard such a thing was impossible. Well, it seems you either have a knack for timing or the favor of the gods. I meant no offense. Let's put this matter to rest over a round, shall we? My treat. Not quite how I hoped to get to know the neighbors. Thank you for your timely assistance with that awkward situation. Well, I suppose introductions are in order after that little fiasco. Aloth Corvisor, at your service. You do manage to find yourself in rather interesting predicaments. That was unexpected. Still, you have my thanks for getting me out of an awkward situation. Did you hear that? About our awakenings being permanent? If those Delamgon are right, you and I are stuck with our awakenings. Not quite the news I was hoping for. Oh, the knowledge that a barely civilized bumpkin will share my mind and body for the rest of my life? That's kind of you to ask. I'd always believed that Isilmir was an ailment I could cure myself of one day. But now, to think she'll be around forever.
Surely, you binter! Means I'm crimmed in this one's skull until he manages to get himself quelled.
Please don't do that. It's bad enough knowing that I truly am stuck with her now. Yes, focus on the goal. A sensible perspective, particularly in the midst of such uncertainty. Yes, if only that knowledge could prevent it. You mean the knowledge that your mind is an unraveling thread and the man holding the other end is a millennia-old priest? Your concern is understandable. And we're traipsing through the wilderness when we should be resting our feet by a fire and savoring a dearer plum wine. Unfair indeed. And while I hate to turn the subject back to myself, this all has me thinking about Isilmir. How I'm stuck with her now. I suppose not, but hope is an unchaste mistress. I know. Overstarched tunics, burnt toast, Rawatai sherry, those are not that bad. But having a stranger pop in and out of your head at will, it's unpleasant, I assure you. You remember Brackenbury Sanitarium? You two deserve each other. That's a charming way to think of things. And not an unpleasant one either. You don't think so, eh? It's a comfort to imagine that all we've gone through has been for something. But it leaves me wondering where we'll be, where everyone else will be, when we finally track down Theos. That means a great deal to me. Truly. I remember well. You've been a capable leader for this expedition, and an invaluable mentor to me. I won't forget what I've learned from you. That reminds me of something else the Delamgon said. About the gods not being real. Yes, I suppose so. Still, I can't help but worry at the state we'd be in if that was somehow true. If there were no power guiding us in this life and shepherding us to the next. Sound advice, indeed. I hope you're right. Well, truer words were never said. Yes, that would take the fun out of it. It's just... I can't help but worry at the state we'd be in if that was somehow true. If there were no power guiding us in this life and shepherding us to the next. Call me dramatic, but the existence, or lack of powerful beings controlling our fates after we die seems worth the worry, no? Don't you wonder at the state we'd be in if there were no power guiding us in this life and shepherding us to the next? I've always seen her as an adversary. You've shown me that, for all her flaws, she's been an ally too. We want the same things, even if we don't go about them the same way. I think it's time I stopped fighting her. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. About her recklessness, her unpredictability, and about how my own irresolution is to blame. I need to start taking control. And that begins here. It's hard to be comfortable in your own skin when you're sharing it with someone else. It's strange. I've lived with her most of my life, and I've always seen her as an adversary. It should have occurred to me the day she stood up to my father. But there's something about being too close to a situation to see it clearly. It will be a relief to stop fighting her. So, it's true. The gods are a sham that people have followed for thousands of years. We've been lied to. Our whole lives, and many lives before that. And it's led us to put our faith in a pantheon of gods that never deserved it in the first place. I'm surprised to hear you say this. It seems that much harm comes from imposing authority where perhaps none is needed. We've seen the atrocities that members of the Leaden Key have committed without even understanding why or for whom they act. Indeed. And I fear what would become of the world if people lost that mooring. Even widespread belief in the gods seems like it's barely enough to correct our aimlessness and contain our depravity. I've also been thinking, there won't be much left of Theos by the time you're done with him, if I know how you operate. That will leave the Leaden Key headless. Perhaps it's best it stays that way. I've also been thinking, there won't be much left of Theos by the time you're done with him, if I know how you operate. That will leave the leaden key headless. Someone will need to fill that void. Someone who can clean up the mess that Theos has made of it. You're right. People will be better off finding direction on their own than following this farce. Besides, the gods haven't exactly done much to prevent us from slaughtering each other. If anything, they've only given us more pretenses for doing so. How can you say that after all we've seen? Even with the idea that the gods are watching us and directing our reincarnations, it's a miracle that we haven't all killed each other already. Then let's face Theos. When this is all over, I'll make sure that no one is able to commit his abuses again. Then let's face Theos. When this is all over, I'll remember what we've been through. I'll see the leaden key transformed into a stronger, better guide for Kith. And I won't make the mistakes Theos did. Not that you haven't been a most capable leader during our journeys, but I expected I would take Theos's place. Whoever fills the role must be familiar with the infrastructure and operations of the leaden key. This is unexpected coming from you. Why keep it going? After all this? The world will fall to pieces without someone in charge. A crumbling castle, abandoned to memories, and an old man who can no longer tell them from reality. I'd say we've seen some rather strange things. You cannot wit that older set? Damned virago, not now! Bit to slick your breeches, scholar lad. I wish I could. But as to walking memories and the old man who can no longer distinguish them from reality, I fear I'm at a loss. Of course, merely processing some of the unusual things we've seen lately. And if Meerwald is to be believed, it would seem you've an uncertain future ahead. Perhaps Defiance Bay holds the answers we need. That does seem like the logical course of action. I shall follow your lead. Yet how can you be so certain your soul does not harbor its own dark mysteries? As you wish. Forgive my intrusion. About my episode in the catacombs. There's something I should have told you earlier. A moment, please. I feel I should explain myself. I also have an awakened soul. But, unlike yours, mine is a presence that shares my senses and my skin, making herself manifest at the most unwelcome times. I'm sorry. I've tried to learn to control Isilmir. I've gotten stronger, but so has she. I learned to keep her a secret a very long time ago. Those with awakened souls are shunned, mistrusted. And after your experience with Meerwald, I'm certain you can see why. You need to be careful. Artless, uncouth, a creature of rash impulses and feeble faculties. She wags her impertinent tongue when she should listen. Defiance Bay is said to have an entire institution dedicated to the study and cure of soul-related ailments. Since our journeys have already brought us to the city, perhaps we could speak with someone there. Of course. I understand. Thank you. This has been a great burden. Of course. As I said, it won't become a problem. Well, that must be a great comfort. Perhaps you'll share the secret of this wisdom one day. That must be difficult. Forgive my intrusion. Nothing. I said nothing. Aye, this one's fit to boil. Hard to get this gaff over anything 'tisn't to do with books and spell speak. I have not been entirely honest about my motives for traveling with you up to this point. When I finished my training in Adir, I was introduced to an organization. All I knew was that they were opposed to the unchecked spread of animancy, and that they could guarantee me postings far away from the Seathwood my father and his earl. At that time, it was enough. In the early years, I thought of them as many things. Hooded men, prudent teachers, the leaden key. Their rules were strict, but their guidance was clear. I sincerely believed they wanted to keep Kith from the folly of their own foolish ambitions. I came to the Deerwood a little over a year ago. My orders were to gather information on animancy in the region. A senior contact met with me every few months to receive my reports and issue new leads. She sent me to Gilded Vale to keep an eye on events surrounding the local lord, but I lost track of her shortly after that. I don't know if she was reassigned, killed, or sacrificed the way you saw. By the time you met me, I'd been on my own for a couple of months. I needed some kind of direction. And after that scrape with the locals, I was ready to get out of town. But then you mentioned that you'd survived that Beowick. and I thought you might be able to put me back on the Leaden Keys trail. I needed some kind of direction. And after that scrape with the locals, I was ready to get out of town. But then you mentioned the hooded figures in the machine, and I was sure you were on the trail of the Leaden Key. I needed some kind of direction. After that scrape with the locals, I was ready to get out of town. But then you mentioned the ruins, but you refused to tell me what you'd seen. Now, I was sure then that it had something to do with the Leaden Key. No, that's not it, I swear. I couldn't have. I'd been out of contact with my superiors for months. And I was correct in a way. But what we found wasn't what I expected. I knew the Leaden Key was trying to stop animancy, but I didn't realize how far they'd gone. Murder, sabotage, abandoning entire districts to shambling horrors. And now the whole city is up in flames. I'm still not sure about animancy, but I know I've been following the wrong master. Please, accept my apology, and my service. Let me fight with you to stop Theos. I shall respect your decision, whatever it is. As you say, I wish you the best of luck against Theos. Truly. Of course, I shall follow your lead. That would be an honor. Thank you. This is a great burden off my shoulders. I don't want to discuss it.
Aye, you're right. No sense listening to that old bam part.
That's enough from you. Listen, there's something I should probably tell you. Please, stop. I heard about the riots in Defiance Bay, and the interruption during the hearing. There's something I need to tell you. What can I do for you? Merely an annoyance. Although...
Back you, Claude! Those hooded fiends are nigh to be trusted!
Please, stop. I need to tell you something. But even if you send the souls somewhere specific now, who knows what the next turn of the wheel will make of them? We can't really control what happens to them. Nor should we try. I had to see the monster Theos had become to realize that. This is beyond either of us. The certainty of the gods is a mercy. Power like this is a heavy burden. Just look at how it crushed Theos. And perhaps he was right to surrender it to Woodica. Astounding. I always knew the Leaden Key stood for something big, but I didn't quite realize what I'd gotten myself into. And now, you're in the middle of something even bigger. With a decision that will affect millions. It's your decision, of course. And whatever you decide, I'm glad our paths crossed in Gilded Vale.
I shall deal with this one. These uns are in for a walloping!
That's not very helpful. A word.
Let's have it out!
Feeling the strain. Oh, about taxed to my limit.
He won't show him the wit feather yet!
We're not alone.
I've had enough of this!
I see the whites of their eyes. I feel off.
Confound it!
That usually works. I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can find. Nice and quiet. I'll have it in no time. Not exactly my area of expertise. The work of a moment. I'm not going anywhere like this.
Could use a wee kip. Ignore this, Dalian.
Farewell.
I fear we've lost the angry one. Get up, lad!
That's unusual.
What do you suppose that bally thing is?
I wonder what this is. I don't suppose we could rest a spell. I don't suppose you're ready to move on.
Canna, watch out! That dwarf's taking all she can! Our dauntless Valian isn't doing so well. I didn't think anything could down the hairy fella.
Even around a haverin.
Our number is diminishing. We can't afford another loss like that. Our work's cut out for us now. Hell night let him take me down. Adair, no!
Durance! He's not moving.
Canna! He's gone.
I'll miss that woman. And her pup.
They've got our bird lass!
We've lost her obvious.
Make the bastards rue that one! I'm seeing red now! If we've to go down, take 'em all with us! Try it again, you caitiffs!
I'll make myself comfortable at Cadnua. With a little something from your cellars. Then I'll see you back at the Black Hound. If that stew doesn't kill me first. Yes? Aye? How may I help? Indeed, I shall. Of course. No rush. Perhaps a little rest is in order. I shall be discreet.
That's it! Curses! Careful! Fire, are you blind? That's me you're hitting!
You should see this. You might find this interesting.
Most inconvenient!
Don't you have other matters to attend?
Fie! You're worse than Aloth!
I'm glad we're traveling together too, but isn't this a bit much?
What you know?
Are you sure?
Ulu Sen! Moeth Ixi Onoth! Lavaru beyond seek! Brith uligna! Arthek worth and wrath! Unite! None shall stop us! Death comes for you! Crave ta fil la thirlim! Queth sil mes metum! Word a build on Sawu! Croak tent! Sakri thu! Ixmaru!
Siro nates spiratanate, samuratana staruade, sire stanawe, faratanurata.
Ach, there goes Bronze Breeches! The devil! She's shattered! Use the pains, Awa! Don't give in, you old bampot!
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sneak up on you. Well, you seemed preoccupied. Mad old watchers, a cult on our trail. What's not to worry about? I suppose I've just noticed you acting a little, unusual lately. Talking to people who aren't there, remembering flashbacks of your previous life. I just want to make sure you're doing all right. Ah, well, good. Then I'm in good company. This just has me thinking about Isilmir and the questionable state of my own soul. But I suppose there's nothing more to be done at the moment, is there? I was just checking in on you. That's all. You know me too well. But it does seem that our afflictions differ. Isilmir asserts herself now and then, but that's nothing new. You, on the other hand, you seem to be getting worse. I should let you rest. It looks like we'll have another full day tomorrow. That's charming. Elegant, yet understated. I had no idea. Overfried cod, watered ale, and prostitution. A bastion of Deerwooden culture. This does look like Theos's kind of place. Find a good epic and a flask of Adira brandy, and I could spend some time here. It's very nice. We're not sleeping here, are we? Better indeed. I must say, I'm impressed. That went better than I expected. That's fragrant. Defiance Bay. I miss Adir already. Whatever crimes they committed, their interior decoration is impeccable. Many of these are quite recent. Someone's been busy. This looks like the kind of place we could find allies. For a prize. What do you suppose happened to him? Nice. Subtle. Well, that's, unusual. Whatever happened here, I'm glad we missed it. I'd wager there are more than a few banned books in here. Nia's got her work cut out for her. Full of surprises, aren't you? Looks like we'll be taking the long way to Defiance Bay. I hope our duties won't require us to linger too long. All this to find feet. I should have guessed. Now that's just tacky. It could be worse. There could be more bones. If this doesn't inspire faith in the gods, I don't know what will. On the bright side, I'm too numb to feel cold now. This is the home of the man responsible for those hanging corpses. You don't plan on knocking, do you? I rather hoped we'd be sneaking up on it. Looks like this place has been abandoned for years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we note a rather sharp drop somewhere around here? Magnificent. After you, I insist. Twin Elms. I've never been this far into Air Glanfath before. This looks like the place Maywald described.
The woman lies. She is merely a fanatic of another kind. She may question scripture and doctrine and things open to interpretation, but there is no denying the truth of the flame. Margren set a path for me. She is fickle and cruel, but that is how she teaches. You know nothing of the fires that have shaped me. Permitting others to live in darkness is as much your weakness as it is theirs, Watcher. It's the trials, Watcher, that make us what we are. Have I not always said so? Perhaps not to her. Many are those whom the gods have scorned. This is petty retribution. I have seen with my own eyes the deceptions of my goddess. The Watcher has shown me as much. But it was not until now that I understood how truly desperate she was. The depths of her deception. That's the servant down, and the mistress still to go. A good start, worthy of being built upon. No! You cannot allow this. He will have no reminders. He will not remember the message we wrote on his fragmented bones and carved into his flesh. The lesson we burned into his soul. To apply the teachings of Durance would more immediately satisfy the cravings in my bones. But this is the stronger lesson, for his soul is already marked by his own hand. To apply the teachings of Durance would more immediately satisfy the cravings in my bones. But this is the stronger lesson, for his soul is already marked by his own hand. You've let him off too easily, Watcher. I would have left such scars on his soul that he'd have begged escape from the wheel's turn. You've let him off too easily, Watcher. I would have left such scars on his soul that he'd have begged escape from the wheel's turn. I served my goddess as you did yours. Whatever desire I had to be redeemed in her eyes was weakness, purged by the Watcher's sight. A whore's beguiling charms, nothing more. But the spell's broke now, Theos. The trial's over. I know friend from foe, and I've come here now to see a foe repaid. There was a message there, whether she meant it or not. Was your goddess who wanted me dead, her poisoned tongue whispering lies in Magran's ear. The end of the road greets us at last. You fared well, Watcher. Better than any Watcher has right to. Seems you were a field in need of a flame's cleansing. Would that my own trial had produced such an outcome. I had figured myself for the field all this time. But you were the field, and I the darkness. A lesson neither of Durance nor of Magran. But with that trial's end, a new one begins. A god's trial. And I will stand in judgment without mercy. But with that trial's end, a new one begins. A god's trial. And I will stand in judgment without mercy. Saw you in the flames. This? In a way. This is more of what's left behind when flame strikes. If Ashfall is a cathedral propped up and fenced with such sticks, then this stick, well, this is what props me up as I walk the cathedral of my road, to other ashfalls waiting to be made, perhaps. The wood is taken from the war of black trees. Sturdy. It served me well on my travels, been a boon companion. Tales. Reminders. Something to think upon. Devotions I can wrap my mind around when chanting words becomes tiresome. Chants lose their strength, but carving symbols into the wood with one's finger, blessed by fire. I find symbols are a greater source of devotion than words, texts. If there were many texts to be had. Texts remind me of a deer, the perfume of aristocracy. The war of black trees, and this staff I carry, are the only hymns and devotions I need. And it's a symbol, one that the faithful and faithless alike understand. I don't seek converts, nor teach the faith. Let's just keep our walks and talks simple. Besides, we have not shared the road and the fire long enough to even make such a talk worth either of our times. Carved? This staff is a history. Acts leave their mark. Some symbols fall into the ash, others blaze brighter. Memory, meaning. It's same as the memories in your head, perhaps more trustworthy. Random acts, things done with instinct, they may make lines burning briefly through the wood. Acts devised, planned, that stay with you. Symbols form and tell the story. It's like all memories, except the staff burns it true. When a thought's close, you see it clearer, brighter. Ones you forget, they get buried. but like rings in wood, the etchings remain. Keeps me grounded. Also, it's a solid walking stick. That symbol? The God Hammer. The 12 circles are a sign of the dozen on the bridge, and the dozen of us that let the hammer fall on them, bridge, God, and all. If there's a symbol that is unlikely to ever fade, it's that one. I thought it might be the last the staff would ever hold. Was holding it that day on the bridge when Aethys fell. It was the spark put to the God Hammer. Might be the last light that touched Aethys before the pyre ate him. You still see them. Not all can. But then again, few have a watcher's gift of sight. She's a goddess, as fickle as they come, and with all the failings you'd expect of an empress and a whore. Too many eyes, too many wants, too much to hold on to. That's the failing of a god. More aspects than words to describe her, like most of them. A god with many nations to oversee, only serves to spread herself too thin. Some, shaped for hunt and war, Abidan the golem, Galawain and his beasts. The latter keeps us honest and awake. The other makes the tools by which we punish those who are not. Be more of a question if a god has any allies. Certainly not any friends. But yes, there were enemies. Before. When you asked about allies. Well now, ally, enemy, that's a skin's edge of difference in history's eye. But there were enemies. Oh, has my talk raised more questions? A true surprise. Do I value her? Why, I hold value in all whores. For a whore, their motivations are honest. Durance? We've shared the fire and a difficult road enough. Enough to know you're willing to suffer one and walk the other. Every god who has followers has a chapter solely for them, whether they know it or not. I know it. This chapter is not a thing of intent, but a flame that catches you. Everyone hears dogma and hymns and rituals in a different way. And whether they admit it or not, the fires that catch your senses all weave into a larger bonfire, which becomes your religion, your way of life, your road. Worshippers take what they want from the god, and then translate it. So it was with Durance. Was a man once, before he became the religion. There is no scripture, no poetry or wordplay open to interpretation. Its disciples are often not welcome, so they walk the road. A physical devotion. Many a metaphor has killed a man, when it would have been best to show him the truth of it, as ugly as it may seem. Before Durance, I put my faith in a great many such words, and encouraged others to do the same. All were weaker for it, unworthy of the flame. The reasons are so many you would age and die listening to them all. But the teachings of Durance also included casting established clergy out who might need reminders of such devotion as well. As the disciples walked the road, the trials of Durance they suffered and dispensed were also ones of justice. All potential converts, even the faithful, were tested for weakness, and if their weakness broke them, so be it. If they survived, then they were transformed, made stronger as Magrin seeks of all. Before I followed the way of Durance, I did not test myself. I did not test others. Weakness and injustice thrived around me because I permitted it to be so. Justice was not seen as our duty. Justice was a thing of Woodica. Transform them. If they broke, so be it. The greater the ruination of their flesh and soul, the greater their hope of salvation. It was the struggle that would strengthen them. One can have enough of words until you hunger for giving the red gift to some prattling fool, whether they serve Margarin or not. God and faith can drive a man to do much others would find difficult. Durance himself admitted as much. He did not relish the task, but he did not shy away from it. All life does, whether by Margarin or not. The Saints' War made it necessary, and as distasteful as it may have seemed, well, now, every mark of Aethys, every weak soul that exposed our throat to the enemy, they would answer for every soldier and Margarin disciple that had fallen. I punished others, yes, men, women, children, and I did not spare the staff or any other instrument I felt would learn them and strengthen them. A purge not just of Aethys, but of frailty, a burning of dry fields, a sacrifice at the whore's altar. But who needs her words when one has her flame to show the way? Where I hail from? From one of Margarin's fires. A cathedral, ashfall, made of blackened trees. I studied the scriptures there, the fires carved into the land, the trunks of the burnt trees, and in the factories where the rifles and cartridges were shaped. All are chapels in other devotions. And what troubles you now? I suspect the answers will seed more questions. The cost of troubling me seems to worry you little. If doubts and curiosity plague you, you're skinning your knuckles on the wrong door. If I could but heal you enough so you took the world as it is without plaguing me. Aethys was the god of rebirth, and his light does not fall on the dear wood. I've heard some claim it's his doing, his death. It's closed the halls to new souls. I doubt it. The Hollowborn have their roots in the acts of men, women. I feel it. That's a curse that runs deeper. It's a godhammer of a different sort, and like the godhammer, it was made by men's hands. There are fewer souls. There are more vessels. It is simply equaling of the process. I feel more remorse in putting down a slathering hound. A wict? Less than a mongrel in its misery. Murder is a kindness, not a crime. Always has been. I would sooner put the blade to those who are to blame instead. If any spirits should be punished, it's theirs. Murder you? I would not grant you any of them the mercy I grant the Hollowborn. You would not be deserving of it. Murder is an old word. Mercy is letting a soul fly free to the next body. True punishment? Ruining someone to their soul. Crack their spirit like you would crack their skulls with a staff. Beat them. Hurt them in mind and body, so their souls become shards. But you leave it inside the vessel, like a bag of glass, to either choke on it or pass it through their bloody stool. Then, leave it in the body to think on it, like planting a new field with the right seed. Many marks may I make upon your flesh, but flame leaves marks that cannot heal. Margarin doctrine dictates true punishment is one that remains in memory, in the soul, in the flesh. Even should the victims die, slowly or swift, sometimes by their own hand afterwards, the lesson lingers, burned in their flesh. Have you seen a man branded by flame? He remembers it always, in every waking movement. It is a lesson writ in the only ink and vellum that matters, blood and flesh. One can burn the soul as well. It is an art, and I do not take pleasure in it, but there is more at stake here than forgiveness. Many of Aethys's faith were punished in the purges following the Saints' War. And the ones that harmed children, they suffered worse. We did what must be done. Wherever they were rooted out, their souls reclaimed. And if they couldn't be reclaimed, we ensured they would never inhabit another body. Wasn't a war. It was a god stepping past himself. The country of Raed Saris and all their heathens. They're paying for it now. Although by my count, the fire should have roared through their country with more force, catching all their souls. Truth, it wasn't even a war. It was a cautionary tale about pride. Specifically, Widewind's pride. He should have stayed a farmer. Gods have taken flesh. In all respects, taking willing and unwilling vessels. It's not a violation. It's what gods do, as long as they accept all that comes with it. Men are weak. Gods? Well, we showed old Widewen that he was flesh and blood, no matter how much light was pouring out of his farmer's hands. Took men of faith to build a weapon, a godhammer. Judgment. Proved him dead at Halgot Citadel. We poured the godhammer into its foundations with faith. Set it alight. Let the hammer fall, upwards onto the anvil. 8 died before the godhammer fell, and the godhammer claimed the remainder. 12 in all. We started saving the Aothasians from themselves, burning any that didn't die with their god. Heresy in Raed Saris is one thing. Heresy here in the Deerwood comes with a more personal touch. As I see it, every Aothasian who still lives in the Deerwood puts the nation at risk, is another dagger held to the throat of our faith. Root them out, burn them, or send them back to Raed Saris to wallow in the blood of their failure.
Tell me what you saw. It is the light of the godhammer you saw.
It was a weapon of Deerwood's people, a symbol of their independence. It saved the Deerwood. It brought the Saints' war to an end, knocked a god from his perch. There are few that would deny Aothis overstepped. The godhammer reminded Aothis of it. You saw its light because I helped shape it, give it life, and release it into the world. Once seen, its glory is almost too bright to be believed, and too bright to be forgotten. There were 12 of us. We fashioned the weapon, drafted plans for it, prayed for guidance at Ashfall, and it came to me there. Each of us were given a staff made from the forest of black trees around us, glowing with embers and fire far greater than this branch you see now. It felt as if the staff was Margaren's own finger, guiding my hand, guiding the other 11, the shadows of the 12 who would come to stand on the bridge to stop Aethys. Even in that stand, there was a ritual to it. For the 12 that stood on the bridge, there were 12 shadows cast, 12 faithful of Margaren, her fiercest supporters and shapers of the Godhammer. Shadows cast by the fire of the Godhammer, perhaps. And we shared their fate as well in time. Now the spine of the Deerwood is marked by the Godhammer, marked by Margaren. Not all deaths come with stilled breath and stilled heart, or other stilled passions beneath the waste. Some deaths come from silence. The connection we once shared with Margaren. After the light of the Godhammer, it was not the same. It was as if we'd lost our senses, and sense of purpose as well. Instead of victory, being welcomed, there was silence, within and without. Not many can claim to have killed a god. It is less a heroic tale than you would think. And such a death, it changed our faith. All faiths, I expect. Doubt followed, and the world changed. I do not believe Margaren was pleased by what we had done. The world is broken, the wheel stilled. There is sickness in the world's heart. Perhaps the price of crossing a god. Crossing 2 gods. Even as Margaren shaped our hands, perhaps we carried her will farther than was allowed. Just as Widewind did. Saint Widewind. Mortal arrogance to match mortal arrogance. Yet if the world had changed, then I sought to change with it. If I had forgotten some of Margaren's teachings, I would find them again. I would make her see me again. I remembered Margaren's teachings, how reminders on the flesh were more important than the death of a vessel. And I wondered if killing Aethys, if that had simply set him free. Had it allowed him to escape his punishment and be taken on the wheel? Like a mortal? As I stepped from the now blessed Godhammer Bridge, I thought of Ashfall. I thought of the War of Black Trees, wondered if I needed to be burned to find myself again. That is Margren at her heart. At least that is my hope. These are the doubts that befall me. The road to Ashfall is long, gives one time to think, and if you think long enough, you do not go home. I left without telling anyone, with only the robes I wore at Halgot, my staff, and my name, which is long buried. Of my fellow 11 craftsmen, disciples, I know not what happened to them, if they suffered the same doubt as I did. But it was underserved. It was wrong. We had done all that Or had asked. Grab victory from defeat and there is something about being used and cast aside. Perhaps Widwen himself felt it. There at the end, when the hammer struck. To be the proof that your god is hollow as the vessel it inhabits. I tried to find purpose, and avoided all contact with other Magranic priests, did not seek the walls of Ashfall, and sought to make amends to my god through actions. I joined with the Purges for a time, and not long after came the first signs of the Hollowborn. So many crimes, trespasses, violations. The Salvation. Animancers were another sickness born of the Saints' War. A relapse of innovation, of desperation to heal what we had caused. All seemed worse than before the bridge, not better. And as years passed, the world became even worse still for the victory. We put much of ourselves into the Godhammer. Such a device is not simply a machine. There are elements of the spirit in it. Even Widwen's spirit. Each of the 12 who brought the Godhammer forth would have done anything to save the Deerwood, save its people. It is why we were chosen. Each of us hated this pretender. That rage, that spirit, that rebellion went into our work. And went into studying him as well. We all studied Widwen. He was our enemy, and he had provided the flesh the god wore as a cloak. That flesh made him vulnerable. I knew what fields his hands had tilled, his family, what he had harvested, where he had been born. We sought to know him, what had led him to fight us. You don't kill the god. You kill the man it inhabits. And you leave that man a ruin. Burn him to ash. The weapon was meant to not only burn his flesh, but it would burn his soul. And it did, at the cost of our own, and at the cost of our goddess's favor. That whore be damned. Perhaps your eyes were blinded by the truth of the Godhammer, Watcher. I feel half a man at times, but even that is twice that of most others. If you fear for my spirit, your fears are baseless. The Godhammer, seeing its light, only fueled my anger and made me stronger, made me re-examine the teachings of Margren, put them in a new light. I do not need you to cast any more questions on me, Watcher. Nor did I ask you to look upon me without my leave. Get gone, and leave me be. It seemed time to find the teachings I had lost, and to carry out the goddess's will in the Purges. Aethys's faith still remained. Huh? Worship the whims of some fickle bitch, and you'll never be more than dirt beneath her feet. Worship what she worships, on the other hand. Take her fire for your own, and her esteem comes on its own. Of course, by that time you no longer need it. Trial and transformation, sure as Durance taught. You see many things that aren't there, Watcher. Perhaps the symbol was for your disappearing sanity, and we are to bid it farewell while you still have the wits to grieve for it. No riddle there, Watcher. It took 12 of us to build the Godhammer. Afterward, I took my leave of all of them to see what Margaret had in store for me. I've seen none of them since. Your kind has a way of interpreting its visions to fit the version of the truth you like best. But Margaret's flame leaves no room for interpretation. Waste the time of others with your distortions and your fever dreams. It's always the way of the mad to try to convince others of a reality only they can see. But when your doctrine's the truth, it requires no convincing, only an opening of the eyes. I would purify you, Watcher, if I thought it would help. As 12 held Aethys fast, we 12 unleashed our prayers and let the Godhammer fall. You think to put the coals to my feet, but what's burned once will never burn again. These talks are your trial, Watcher. You cannot deflect the truth to one who has already been purified by it. Come to pray at the statue. The others are welcome. But it's best if just you and I trade words, and your shadows stay quiet. Hands off their weapons, both arcane and steel. It's only you I want to trade words with anyway. Traveling by yourself, it's best you and I trade words, and your hands lay off your weapons, arcane and steel. It's only you I want to trade words with anyway. I swear before the whore that is Margaret, no harm will come to you in her shadow, if that's enough of a promise for you. If not, the world holds many whores we worship. Respect comes with honest titles. I bet even you have gone against instinct in exchange for a little copper, or paid for such in countless ways. But if I give offense, if words are all that are left to a man, then why in the dear wood of all places he should have leave to speak them? I didn't give it. You probably find names as useless as I do. The names that litter this world like debris are hard enough to wrap around the tongue. And what do they matter? It's what's beneath the skin and the letters I care about. What burns within. It's more important to me you're a watcher than whatever culture or accent decorates your letters like awkward crowns. Take pride in your actions, not where you hail from, or how your name rolls off whatever liar's tongue coats it now. If you need a title to hang on me to match your own, Watcher, then call me Durance. And as you observe souls, I test them. I am a missionary. I walk this diseased nation with its heathen, its people so careless with the spirits of others and their own, watchers among them. Yes, I know you for what you are, and your name doesn't interest me. Names are for honest folk, and you are a crack that shines light from another place. We're meant to travel together, you and I. Saw you in the flames. Not your face, but that soul of yours. All tightened up, like a huntsman's knot. There's things we can teach each other, if you're in need of answers to your mantle of questions. I don't force my words on anyone other than you. I don't care who walks with you or what their mewling problems and politics are. There's enough howling in the world without me stoking that fire. I won't take from your provisions, don't need much on the road. I can carry my weight, which is considerable. Many will stand against you. They probably already have, from what I can see. Left their marks, it seems. Like a trail, worming its way behind you. Disease? Spirit wind? Both could have touched you, yet here you stand. As for disease, Not all of us were close to water when the pox hit, but it's no longer a passenger in my flesh. It left its marks as well. But like flames, the pox doesn't strike twice, nor is it catching. You think me a burden? I'm here to help you, Watcher. And you can help me with nothing more than letting me walk with you. I'm no stranger to battle, if that's your fear. And if you need, I can tend wounds and give counsel. But both only if you ask for it. Her? Don't fear her jealousy. Let us see what the road holds, Watcher. Then let us walk together, Watcher. What is it, Watcher? This machination of Woodica. Do you trust in the truth of it? It stinks of her. It is justice, but if her greater purpose was to think Margaret would fall prey to such deceit. And Aethys, Widewin had always claimed to be invading Deerwood to free it. What if it were true? What if he had come to stop Woodica's plot before it began? Surely Aethys earned his death at Godhammer Citadel, but not for those reasons, not to keep him silent. If such a thing has brought about this chaos, must we always be tools of gods? If Woodica and Margrin, if they are the cause of this, the Hollowborn, if the purges were never necessary, if Aethys was fighting back, so many lies, and Woodica, perhaps she is the next god to fall beneath the Godhammer. I know it had to be done. I know it had to be done, yet there would have been times where I would have stayed my hand. Woodica, she must answer to her own justice. No, I am glad to have walked this far with you, seen this truth. Perhaps it was what I was meant to see. With a watcher's eyes. All these dances of words and intrigues, machines of men, twisted, ripping the souls of children, and by the gods, the goddess of justice. If I could end her like Aethys, Margrin burned her once. One can do so again. Woodica, she must answer to her own justice. No, it is not. I am glad to have walked this far with you, seen this truth. Anyone with a shred of spirit seeks both justice and punishment. It burns in the heart of anyone who lives. All seek it. If the world does not balance, we all drown in the oceans, and the gods would not care. Margrin, she must be redeemed, and punishing Woodica, that will serve. Is this some final joke at my expense? To test my faith further? And why would you think that, Watcher? That is all you have, a feeling. If feelings provoked me to say every thought that crossed my mind, get gone, and leave me to my thoughts. If all you have are questions, then I have enough of those. She is a bitch of a goddess, to be sure, but even a whore only goes so far in crossing those she serves. You answer a question with a question. Then why did I feel her disappointment at Halgot? Why were we shamed? Kill me. She is a goddess. I still drink from her burning breasts, Watcher. If she wished me dead, she could trace me to my source and kill me. To think I served her, I followed her. Now I shall serve no one. Woodica's lies must be answered. And now it seems I must take fire and war from a goddess's false claim as well. I still take from her strength as I did, for as long as it lasts. For I shall not cast her aside yet, until I have drained her dry and had my fill, just as she intended for me. For I have learned one of the lessons of the faithful. The faithful may wound a goddess greater than any enemy. A purification is coming, and this fire shall consume them both. They died in the blast, yes, the other 11. I was the only one to walk away. I thought, We had wronged our goddess. That this was my trial, and if I could prove myself worthy of her! I should have known better. There is only one God of redemption, and I saw him ended. There's no proof, Watcher. I was a fool to think you could help me see any farther than I could. Then, here I'll stay, Watcher. If you see differently, come again. You don't want what I have, Watcher. Some flames spread easier than others. I thought you were better than that, Watcher. About blazing time! There's a lesson to be taught. I'll let Margaren's fire bless this one. Let's burn this away. Can't stand much longer. Need a fighting hand here. I'm soon for the wheel. The dogs seem to come to us. Fall back. Been poisoned. Fiery whore of a goddess! Not even slowing it down! And what does the flame reveal? A simple test. Margaren's fire casts light in dark places. Light, flame, and sound. We'll keep to ourselves. I can do that. Not on your life. That's settled. Carrying too much of your shit to move. I'd say it's time to get a campfire going and let sleep follow. My patience is burning low. You walk your path, I'll walk mine. We need to talk, you and I. Just like an Adiran to go down fast. A gift if the Aothasian doesn't wake up. So much for our mighty huntress. Boy needs to get his head out of books and into the fight. Someone felled the feisty bitch. Catman's down. No surprise there. Son of a whore! Scum with half a cock! That'll leave a painful reminder. No good fighting to be had on your back. All his spells and still couldn't handle a fight. No rebirth for him this time. Hope that lad got out of the library and into a woman's bed before today. So much for the hardy huntress. Just flesh and blood beneath all that steel and feathers after all. We're one fewer now. Rally, let's leave some reminders. Consumed by the flame. Back to the wheel with that one. Something over there. And the fire shows me something new. Now this I haven't seen before. Uluthen. Moeth Ixiana. Lavaru beyond seek. Brith Uligna. Arthek Worthen Roth. You don't want what I have, Watcher. Some flames spread easier than others. I thought you were better than that, Watcher. About blazing time!